It grabs you, you know, and before you know it, 20 years have gone by.
I was sitting in jail, and I'm planning on getting out and using. That's going to put me right back to where I was sitting thinking about it.
We're seeing a methamphetamine epidemic.
The problem with methamphetamine is there's no medicinal solution.
And if you are cooking methamphetamine in Vernon County, it's not if, it's when we will come. We will get you.
Thank you for joining us tonight as we tackle an issue troubling our community.
We're talking about meth. And even if you don't know someone who's used, or if you've never been a victim of a meth-related crime, maybe you've never even seen a needle on the street, you have been unknowingly affected by this growing problem.
Now, meth starts with just one light of a pipe, but from there the addiction seeps into family life. Then law enforcement gets involved, the court system, the foster care system, even our schools aren't safe. And even before you can flick a lighter, the whole community is reeling from this addictive and devastating drug.
First tonight on Meth, the crisis in our community, a look at this growing epidemic.
Methamphetamine is severely altering who we are and what we stand for.
Chances are you've seen the No Meth Altered State ad campaign airing on this station. It hits close to home for Tammy Renley of Medford.
We'll never be the same. You know, we've lost an innocence.
Renley's son spent time in prison for using and selling meth, and she says he is now in recovery.
It's always in the back of your mind where they are, how they are.
To cope, she began speaking out and trying to raise awareness about the drug. The same goal of this education and prevention campaign unveiled by the Wisconsin Department of Justice.
To restore things to the way they should be and prevent anyone from living in an altered state.
Methamphetamine is so corrosive to families and communities that it can take away the things that we love most.
Wisconsin Attorney General Brad Schimmel calls the meth epidemic one of the most challenging problems the state faces. The DOJ reports meth use has surged, especially in rural areas. Wisconsin crime labs analyzed 300 meth cases in 2010. By 2017, the number jumped to nearly 1,700, a 500% increase.
Methamphetamine costs us about $424 million a year to deal with the effects that this is causing on our community.
This map highlights the hardest hit counties in western and central Wisconsin.
We are hearing tips about meth use, meth sales, almost on a daily basis.
With the increase in this highly addictive drug, also known as speed, crank, ice, and crystal, police and sheriff's departments have seen an uptick in other crimes, too.
The number of property crimes have gone through the roof as far as burglaries, thefts, whatever people can get their hands on to sell for small amounts of money to pay for their habits.
Habits driven by highly addictive, potent, and cheap meth, which federal drug agents say is produced by Mexican drug cartels. Enforcement plays a key role, but experts say we will not arrest our way out of this epidemic.
The past, 20 years ago they tried, and we see where we are today.
A 2005 crackdown in Wisconsin on the sale of cold medicines containing ephedrine and pseudoephedrine, key ingredients in meth, reduced the number of large-scale meth labs. But police warn of smaller one-pot or shake-and-bake mobile labs where addicts make their meth in soda bottles. Some scoutmasters even advise their troops on nature hikes to avoid picking up trash for fear it contains meth and could blow up.
It's pretty remarkable when you've got a scoutmaster telling scouts not to pick up litter. I was a scout. That's not how they're wired. They want to pick up litter in the woods. But we have to do that now because this has become so pervasive.
Still, those on the front lines say there is hope.
Treatment, education, and all those things can be helpful in our campaign against these drugs.
And let the community know that it doesn't have to be a dirty secret and that there is a lot of power that comes from the fact that we band together and that we talk about it.
No meth, and let's join together to restore things to the way they should be and prevent anyone from living in an altered state.
The renewed push to prevent meth was spearheaded by Wisconsin Attorney General Brad Schimmel and the State Department of Justice. As the November election approaches, we spoke to Schimmel's Democratic opponent, who calls meth a significant problem that requires a three-pronged approach.
I think we need to be doing more to address the problem. We should be expanding access to treatment. We should be ensuring that our enforcement efforts target large-scale traffickers, and we should be continuing and expanding upon our prevention efforts.
Many meth users say the highly addictive drug delivers a rush to the brain, which gets them hooked. Methamphetamine increases the amount of natural chemical dopamine in the brain, according to the National Institute on Drug Abuse. Dopamine contributes to body movement, motivation, and rewarding behaviors. The drug's ability to rapidly release high levels of dopamine fuels addiction, but the stimulant's side effects can be dangerous.
Weight loss, rapid weight loss. You may see some deterioration in hygiene, which may lead to tooth decay or breakouts and so on.
Immediately after doing meth, users can experience agitation, chest pain, diarrhea, fever, hyperactivity, loss of appetite, shortness of breath, and nausea and vomiting. Long-term side effects include anxiety, confusion, hallucinations and delusions, insomnia, mood disturbances, paranoia, and violent behavior. Chronic meth users also commonly experience formication, a sensation resembling small insects crawling on or under the skin.
Of course, there are physical effects, as you can see in these before and after meth pictures. Weight loss is common. There's also a symptom called meth mouth, which is severe tooth decay. Skin sores are also common because chronic meth users can experience formication, which causes meth users to pick or scratch their skin. Throughout this special report, we're showing you the tough truth about how the drug deteriorates its users' lives. These faces of meth are an alarming reminder.
As for those who use meth, the answer might surprise you. It's mainly white teenage males. 53% of users are men, 69% are white, 18% Hispanic, 13% other races. Now, as we've said, 400 new people use meth in Wisconsin each day. The average age of those users, just over 18. 3 recovery meth addicts that we spoke with say they all got hooked when they were just teenagers.
While their backgrounds, beliefs, and battles are all different, their stories are very similar. Samantha Wenzel shares.
I overdosed a couple years ago. I was in the hospital on my deathbed. They told my mom to plan for my funeral. I got out of the hospital after 4 months. Did it all over again. Got hospitalized like 4 more times.
Methamphetamine took control of Josh Gibson early on and didn't let go. Same for Chad Zweifel.
When the methamphetamine started, it was glass, and I remember doing it the first time, and, then it was work, and go, and everything was good then,
Zweifel was hooked on meth at 19, the first spark of a nonstop 25-year habit.
Before it was methamphetamine, it was crank, fluff, people were making it. Then nitrous ammonia was around, and, that's when it started. It grabs you, and before you know it, 20 years have gone by. 4 relationships, 4 kids, it's just, I look back and it was fast, a blur,
A similar story for Belinda Mercer, who first tried meth at 16.
Didn't know really what it was and just tried it, and I was completely addicted. It just became something to use.
Another common thread between the 3, a breaking point.
2014 is when everything fell apart. I lost my place, I was like $6,000 behind on rent. My place is getting towed out of there. I had lost everything. Went and stayed at a buddy's house, and that just about wrecked our friendship. I wore out my welcome there. Next thing you know, it's like I don't have any place to go.
My lowest moment was my children. I put my children through a lot that I don't regret, but I wish they would have never had to go through it. I can't go back, but I can definitely move forward with them.
From then on, every day is a step forward, a step in the right direction, a step out of addiction, until the inevitable misstep.
I was actually clean for 10 years and just went back to it. I was selling everything possible to get it.
What I did wrong was hanging out with that crowd. I let all them people go, but then I had one buddy that I had to hang on to, because I felt for him. He was in his addiction. I went out there to, try to tell him that I was worried about him and he needed to get some help. 2 weeks later, we're doing dope together.
But sobriety is a series of stepping stones as these 3 walk down the road to recovery.
So I'm not getting my life back. I'm just learning how to live again for the first time. At the time, at 31 years old.
You don't ever have it. Recovery's going to be the rest of your life. You don't have nothing but a disease. You got to let go of the people. It's just let go of the people, the lifestyle, all that, I don't think there's a right and a wrong way. It's just the main thing is don't use, Keep trying to do the next right thing, stay honest, and I think things fall into place,
Even on my biggest struggling days, I have 1,000 people I could call just to get that help. there's always someone there to help you, someone always to lend a hand, someone always to listen, and never give up. It doesn't matter what you're going through, there's someone always there to help.
Healing requires helping.
And I would just love to continue walking a journey beside someone else to help them through it.
Even if it's just something as simple as sharing their story.
Don't give up, don't give up. I mean, whatever you're going through now only adds to your story. If you're still upright and breathing, it's only a comma, it's not a period mark. Like, life goes on.
The outlook isn't necessarily bleak for those who've used meth. We've just met 3 people in recovery.
Dave Soley introduces us to Jordan Halter as he looks to move past his dark existence while hooked on drugs.
It was an average, everyday Midwestern kid.
Until Jordan was introduced to methamphetamine. The drug led him to jail 19 times, but he didn't care. Meth altered his thinking.
I can't believe I was tricking myself into planning on doing the same thing that got me into where I was sitting at that time. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I was sitting in jail and I'm planning on getting out and using. That's going to put me right back to where I was sitting thinking about it. Like, that's not right.
But not uncommon.
They just can't quit.
The Cross County Sheriff Chief Deputy Jeff Wolf sees it all the time.
It is very common that we see repeat meth addicts getting arrested for using the substance, coming back to our jail.
There's no specific medication for meth addiction, but
just because there aren't medications for a specific substance that one might abuse doesn't mean there's not recovery, doesn't mean there's not treatment.
Dr. Anna Kelly works in behavioral medicine.
Because addiction is a chronic and primary brain disease, it drives the user to continue to use until something interrupts that process.
In Jordan's case, the something interrupting the process was opportunity, honesty, and determination. He had access to a number of programs, including drug court, and that may have been the beginning.
So I decided in my own mind that if I could not complete drug court, that myself, I deserve to go to prison because I keep messing up and I keep using. Like, why can't I stop? So I sat down with the coordinators and I was honest with them. I said, I don't know what to do. I need help.
That admission is vital because treatment requires a patient's desire to recover.
I've heard an addict say, before I was ready to get in recovery, nothing could make me. But when I was ready to get into recovery, nothing could stop me.
Once he made that decision, life changed for Jordan fast. Drug court accepted him, authorities released him from jail, and through a program called Project Proven at Western Technical College, Jordan was in school.
So it went from 5 years in prison to getting out, going to the college to get welding boots and a welding helmet, and the very next day I'm in college on a new path.
Today, Jordan is married, employed, and clean. It wasn't easy, but it's possible. He wants others to know that, and this.
Like, even in your darkest days, there's always light, even if you can't find it. Because I found it.
In 2016, Halter was among the recipients of the Wisconsin Job Honors Award. It recognizes people who have overcome obstacles to gain employment.
Halter credits a lot of people for his recovery: a local judge, law enforcement, drug court, his wife, and Western Technical's Project Proven, a program that led to his current job.
There are similar programs here in the Chippewa Valley. The Farman Center, which is part of the Luther Social Services, has a 42-bed adult facility. The L.E. Phillips Libertas Treatment Center has inpatient, outpatient, and day treatment, as well as detoxification and relapse services. We have a full list of these resources at WQOW.com.
Stay with us after the break. We learn more about how meth is made through a process called smurfing.
And the costly lengths that agencies have to go through to clean meth up, and who's footing that bill.
You're watching a News 18 special presentation, Meth, Crisis in Our Community.
If you're wondering where meth is coming from, supplies of the stimulant are being shipped into Wisconsin from several sources.
Most of the meth in Wisconsin is distributed from Minneapolis and St. Paul, according to authorities. They say the drug's origins can be traced to super labs across the southwestern U.S. and California. But most often, the meth comes from Mexico.
Those pipelines feeding an increased addiction across the state. Here's a look at meth cases in Wisconsin from 2016. Counties highlighted here saw at least some cases, but counties in gold saw the highest amount. The bulk of those in the northwest and north central regions. Barron County, a staggering 103 meth cases reported. You can see Eau Claire County is among the top of the list, with more than 50 cases reported.
Now, looking at it from another angle, from 2011 to 2015, Eau Claire County law enforcement saw a 526% increase in meth-related arrests. Only one other agency in the state saw a higher increase, Prairie du Chien.
We know meth is a problem in our cities, but the drug doesn't adhere to urban roads. Here's Heather Armstrong with a look at how and why meth is bleeding into our rural areas.
Tom Johnson and Lieutenant Scott Bierkos are on the front lines of a drug war, a meth epidemic plaguing rural communities.
I think it's a huge misconception to a lot of people. There's many times people say that they're really happy that we're keeping the drug problems in the big cities, and that's just not true.
According to law enforcement, underdeveloped places like this cornfield in Vernon County are prime places for people to dump drugs.
They're not going to take it to like the hazardous material dump site. So you have them abandoning their cook sites. Now we have the Cub Scout, Girl Scout picking up, and now they're at risk.
Originally, meth labs were elaborate operations, and Wisconsin was prime real estate.
There was a meth lab north of Westby, actually, in Vernon County in 1991 that was one of the largest labs ever in the history of the state at that time. There was enough precursor chemicals on site at that laboratory to produce 50 kilos more of methamphetamine.
That bust changed the industry forever, forcing drug dealers to get creative. So instead of cooking meth in a house, they'd cook in a car, in public places where they can just dump and go. For Johnson and Bierkos, their message to meth makers is pretty clear.
We don't like you. We don't want you around here, and as far as I'm concerned, you can go back, crawl under whatever rock you came out from under.
I have no time for it. And if you are cooking methamphetamine in Vernon County, it's not if, it's when we will come. We will get you.
For now, when it comes to what the public can do to combat meth in rural areas, call law enforcement if you suspect someone is making meth.
Unfortunately, meth is easy to make and the ingredients easy to find. Over-the-counter medications are used to make meth in a process called smurfing. Pseudoephedrine is a common ingredient found in cold and allergy medicines you buy over the counter. That's what's being abused and transformed into meth. The state recently required all pseudoephedrine sales to be logged in a national database in an effort to stop illegal purchases. If you are caught in the act, you could be charged with a felony.
Meth can be made many different ways, and the process can oftentimes be as dangerous as the drug itself. Its ingredients include cold medicine, water, lithium from batteries, ammonia, lye, and solvents. The most common way meth is made in Wisconsin is the one-pot or shake-and-bake method. Those ingredients are poured into a plastic bottle or other container, then shaken. Too much pressure can cause the container to start on fire or explode.
It can cost up to $3,000 to clean up just one of these meth labs, and the burden often falls on taxpayers. As Phil Aldrich shows us, it's not only costly, but also dangerous to clean up these labs.
One of the bottles in which this was made, you pick that up, it can explode. You can lose a limb. You could lose your life from this.
Meth labs, so dangerous, this is what someone has to wear to clean one up.
I'm expecting him to ask us to take him to our leader.
This will provide protection for the hands and upper forearms. The straps on just like what a firefighter would wear.
The hazards that we're seeing are fire, explosion, toxic gases.
And officers can't touch anything, even with gloves on, so they have to resort to this. Now that hazardous waste is safely in a bin, this is where the state's new cleanup initiative kicks in. The smaller bins now go into the new chemical storage container. They can stay there safely until a licensed contractor can pick them up. It seems pretty simple, but it's saving a lot of money and cutting their cleanup costs by about 90%.
We used to just take everything out and let it sit on scene until a hazardous waste contractor could come up. Now, the closest that would typically be Chicago.
That means local crews would have to wait hours, anywhere from 5 or 6 to 10 to 12 for those contractors to get in and safely remove everything. By cutting costs here, the hope is that more money can go toward fighting addiction at its core.
We now know not to pick up plastic bottles you may find, but what are some other common items that could be a sign of meth use?
We'll look into that after the break. Plus, look at the sadder side of meth use. What happens to the kids when a parent decides to use? Keep it here.
And as we head to break, more of the shocking and scary images of the faces of meth. A hard look at what happens to those who are addicted to the drug. When we say meth is a crisis in our community, we mean it.
Meth becomes priority one for the user, even for parents. And that means someone has to step up and help children who are often forgotten.
News 18's Shannon Satterley takes a closer look at how the meth epidemic is draining resources aimed to help kids.
In Chippewa, Rusk, Barron, Dunn, Eau Claire, we're seeing a methamphetamine epidemic.
In 2015, only 15 kids were in placement in Chippewa County. Now, 3 years later, that number has multiplied by 12.
We are now over the 180 mark. So what that's doing is that's placing a tremendous burden on our system, not only financially, as we're trending towards $600,000 over budget.
All the problems lead back to meth.
We look across the state, and it's 80% of the children in foster care are there as a result of their parents abusing some sort of drug. It just so happens in this community it's methamphetamine.
Parents who use meth can take care of their kids, but someone has to. That's where social workers come in.
You're seeing the kids, but you're not able to spend as an intensive amount of time or as much time with them as you would like to help them overcome and really identify the needs that they have, to get them in touch with the appropriate providers and resources to minimize the impact and the trauma that's had on them from being removed and placed in foster care.
I see the burden on the caseworkers. I see the turnover, the trauma that they experience. You know, we talk about the children, but there's also that secondary trauma which workers experience every day. People aren't always happy to see the Department of Human Services coming up to their door, knocking on it and taking their children away. This is not a favorite activity of the workers.
The caseload is heavy, the job is stressful, so caseworkers aren't sticking around.
It's $54,000 for every child protective services worker that we have to replace. There's a cost associated with turnover. It's not that we just want people to go because there's another person standing in line that we want to hire, but it takes over a year to even learn to walk at this job. They're running after 2 years, and hopefully they're not running out the door.
The ones who do stick around are now part of a larger movement involving law enforcement, caseworkers, health professionals, and families all across Wisconsin searching for solutions.
There is hope, I think, in this epidemic, and it stems from multiple community members and a way of challenging all of our own thinking and how we address the meth and drug epidemic. Looking at these individuals as people and not as addicts, and recognizing that it's just not about using and not using.
Another reason people aren't giving up is the children.
Unfortunately, when it comes to their health, well-being, and futures, more questions remain that are answered, especially with what to do when a child's hair sample tests positive for methamphetamine.
There hasn't been a lot of studies and research done to what you can do immediately. We refer them to their pediatrician, make them aware that this has happened.
Here's what we do know. Children of meth users are at risk of social, emotional, developmental, and behavioral problems during adolescence, according to a study from the Annual Review of Public Health. They could also have cognitive, psychological, and permanent brain damage or physical impairment. Perhaps most disturbing, social services say while high on meth, parents might not be as discreet about sexual material or behaviors, leading to an increased number of children exposed to pornography or other harmful sexual situations, which we know can lead to possible lasting trauma.
For you to help, early detection is key, and nothing helps more than education. Now, as for how people use meth, most people smoke it. 25% inject it, which comes with its own risks. 8% inhale it, and 5% use other methods.
Common household items are often altered to help get a meth user high. So what are some things you should be watching out for? Aluminum foil in tin cans can be used to heat meth so users can inhale the smoke. Cut straws and empty ink pens are the preferred method for snorting meth. Glass pipes or light bulbs without filament are used to smoke meth. Look for black burn marks on one side. Needles mean a user is shooting meth, and small plastic bags are what meth is typically stored in.
Tonight's message, meth use is seeing a staggering spike in Wisconsin.
But with awareness, that trend can change, especially if we educate everyone in our community.
Head to WQOW.com for links to the stories you saw tonight and for more explanation of resources available in Eau Claire for users, families of users, and any concerned community member.
Thanks for joining us.